All right, now it's time to shift into our main topic. So for the next few episodes, it might end up being quite a few episodes, we're going to dig into what I'm calling everything you need to know about snare drums. And we're going to start this week with what does the diameter of a snare drum actually do? I think the easy hypothesis is it'll make the pitch higher. A 12-inch drum will be higher pitched than a 15-inch drum. But what I'm investigating, and we'll check it out in this video I made, is how does the tone change if you tune a 12, a 13, a 14, and a 15-inch drum identically, top heads and bottom heads, exact same frequencies. What's the tone? What's the sustain? What's the feel? That's the part that doesn't translate to video, is what does it feel like when you play a 12 tuned one way versus a 15 tuned exact same tension. What does it feel like? So my theory, which is what I wanted to test with this, was that if you like a high-pitched drum, but you don't want it to feel super stiff, then go with a very small drum and tune it a little bit lower. You'll get that pitch, but you'll get the nice soft feel. Conversely, if you like the feel of a tight drum, but you want a lower pitch, use a 15 or something like that, a 14 or a 15, because you can get a lower note, but you can get, the tighter rebound if that's what you desire. So in this video, I have four different drums here. Let me just show you what we've got. So if I went a 12, a 13, a 14, and a 15. All wood shell drums. I couldn't do a perfect replica of every drum. That I don't have that available, but I did wood shell drums. 12 is this 7x12 Birch. It's a solid shell, stave shell drum by Solid Drums over in Switzerland. So that's a 12. We have a 13, which is a steam bent cherry drum that Bruce Hagwood at RBH Drums made. That's a 6x13 cherry. For the 14, I have this 6.5 steam bent flamed birch shell that GMS made. So that's our 14. And then unfortunately I don't have a solid shell 15. I have this is a ply shell mahogany that Bucks County Drums made. This is a 15. It is a 5.5x15. So those are our 4 sample drums. What I did was I tuned them all to my personal preference of a starting point, which is C sharp on top, F sharp on the bottom. So it's a 4th between them. I put the exact same drum heads on every drum, so they all have this. This is a Drum Factory Direct. It's a DH004. It's a single-ply coated. It's equivalent to a Evans G1 Remo Ambassador or a Aquarian texture coated. I believe it's a 10 mil film with a coating. So exact same head on all 4 drums. I tuned them all to the exact same frequency, top and bottom, and then I just played the same beat each time. And then I took the batter head up a third, so I went up to an E and did another playthrough, and then I squeaked out the super high note of a G on 3 drums, but not on the 15. So let's just check it out. So let's just watch the experiment, and then I'll share some more thoughts afterwards. Check it out here. So we're going to examine 4 different drums. What does the diameter of a snare drum actually do?
All right, first up, we're going to try this. This is a 7x12, the 12-inch drum. This is a solid Birch drum by Solid Drums over in Switzerland. I have it tuned C sharp on top, F sharp on the bottom. All these drums are going to be starting out that way. So let's hear what the 12-inch drum sounds tuned like this, wide open, no muffling. Check it out. All right, some quick observations at this tuning with this 12-inch drum. Feels very soft, even though it's tuned to what I would consider medium or maybe even medium high on some of the other drums. It feels more like a medium low kind of vibe, real soft and cushy under the sticks. All right, now let's take it up a third. We're going to take the 12-inch drum here up a minor third to an E on top. I'm not going to touch the bottom unless I feel like I have to. Let's just see what we get when we take this up a minor third. All right, observations, even with that little bit of adjustment, I think I might have did like a quarter turn on each lug to get it up to that. Now it sounds like a higher drum to me, like what a 12-inch drum should sound like. Even though it's not super tight, it still feels nice and soft. So that's an observation with this 12-inch drum, is you can get that high kind of popping sound without having to put a ton of tension on the drum to make it feel hard. It still feels kind of soft and comfortable. Let's see if we can squeeze another third out of it and see what happens. All right, I was able to get another third out of it, so now the batter head is G, G4, and then actually the bottom head is lower than the top now. Let's see what we get. So it's G over F sharp. I mean, it's definitely moved into special effects territory very quickly, though. So within just a couple, I mean, that might have been a total of half, three-quarter of a turn to go from what I thought was like a pretty fat, meaty, lower sound to this like special effects side drum sound. So that's the 12. All right, now we've stepped up to the 13-inch drum. This is a 6x13 solid cherry shell. Again, I have it tuned just like we started with the 12. It is C sharp over F sharp, which is my starting point with every drum. Let's see how it sounds. All right, some quick observations here with the 13-inch drum at the C sharp over F. It feels tighter under the stick. It feels more kind of where I would put a drum to start. Whereas the 12 felt soft and cushy. This kind of feels more medium high, but still a lot of nice overtones. So let's crank it up a third and see what we get. All right, I took the batter head up about a half a turn it ended up being. So it's a E over F sharp. Let's see what it sounds like. All right, I think similar to the 12, once I took it up to this pitch, it started to become more of, I think of like head voice for a snare drum, where you're getting a lot more attack, losing some body. But, you know, it still feels nice and articulate. Let's take it up higher. Let's take it up to the G and see what we get. Well, that's about as high as this drum, I think, should ever go. It might even be too high for most situations. It's pretty choked out. It's, you know, maxed out, I would say. If you dig that sound, it might be a good special effects sound. It might be a good main sound if that's your vibe. To me, it's starting to feel a little stiff, a little rigid. I'm wanting to hear more shell, and it's not quite giving it to me at that tension. I would use the 12 for that super high sound, so I could get a little less tension on the head, still get some playability, but get that nice pop and crack. All right, that's the 13. Let's move on to the 14. All right, now it's time for the 14-inch drum. This is a 6.5 by 14 steam bent solid birch. Same place we started with the others, C sharp over F sharp. Let's see what we get. All right, some quick observations with this 14-inch drum tuned here. This feels like it has more body, more power. Feels just more like a normal starting point for a snare drum for me. It's got depth, it's got power, it's got articulation. That's why I always start at C sharp over F sharp on 14-inch drums. It's like the happy medium between tight and crispy and kind of just some fat and punchiness. Let's crank it up a bit to the E over F sharp and see what we get. Some observations with the 14 tuned up to the E. This feels like as high as this drum comfortably wants to go. It's really, that would say that's the tightest sound that this particular drum, this and probably most 14-inch drums, that feels like it's at the breaking point. But let's just try it and go a little bit further, see what happens. Let's try to take it up to the G. I'm honestly surprised how much body this 14-inch drum actually maintains at that high of a tuning, but it's certainly at the absolute max. I don't know that I could even get much higher of a pitch out of this batter head. So it's kind of, I don't know, choose your option. If you really love that super high sound, but you want some depth, some fatness out of it, maybe a 14 cranked to sky heavens. But if you want that high pitched sound, but maybe you want the drum to be a little bit more open, then maybe go for the 13 or even the 12. Let's shift over to the big guy, the 15. All right, for our biggest drum, this is a 15-inch. This is actually a plywood mahogany drum. The others were solid shells, so it's not a 100% fair comparison, but it's a 15-inch wood drum. I've got it tuned C sharp over F sharp. I can tell you already, just getting this thing initially tuned, this might be the upper register for this drum already, but let's take a listen. Yeah, so this drum, this 15-inch drum tuned, this medium tuning, C sharp over F sharp, that feels kind of like the drum might be at its highest point. It feels kind of tighter, a little bit more punchy. To be honest, when I use this drum, it's almost always tuned much, much lower. But let's see what happens if we try to take it up to the E. All right, it took quite a bit of muscle to try to get this thing up to the E, but we made it. This is absolutely as high as this drum will go. It's probably well beyond the comfortable range. There's no way we would get the G out of it. But let's see what we get here with the E, the super high E. It's not necessarily where I would, choose to put this drum, but it has a lot of pop and a lot of power. And I think because the head is so tight, it's also controlled. There's not a lot of overtones, probably less ring to my ears. I have to check the recording. Less sustain and ring coming out of this drum tuned up to the E versus the 12 or the 13. Just a thought. Again, I use 15s primarily for like lower register stuff that the other drums just can't get down to. But that's it. That's the 15-inch drum. You know what? Let's take a listen to all 4 of them back to back. I'm just going to splice the groove at each tuning. So we're going to start with C sharp. You're going to hear all 4 drums. E, all 4 drums. And then we go to the G. You're only going to hear the 12, 13, and 14. Check them out.
I should explain the gear that I recorded with for that demo. It's just 3 mics. It's a Shure Beta 52A bass drum mic, just outside the front head, like an inch off center. It's not inside the drum. I have a, Austrian Audio CC8 overhead, which is like 3 feet directly above the center of the snare drum, pointing straight down. And then for the snare drum mic, I opted to put it on the side of the shell. So let me hold up this drum here. You can see this. So the mic is, 2 inches away from the shell, aimed right, roughly at the middle or maybe slightly below middle of the shell. Why did I do that? I did that because I didn't want to just be capturing the drum head. I wanted to capture the whole drum as best as I could with one mic. So that's the microphones for this recording. Mixing wise, just typical mixing to get rid of some low mid buildup that's just not part of the natural sound. Tiny little bit of high shelf to just add some crispiness. And then wherever I would find the fundamental pitch of the drum, just a tiny little boost. So just standard EQ moves that I would do on any recording for anyone. And then mastering, typical mastering with multi-band compression, just barely touching it in a limiter just to bring it all up. And that's it. So you're hearing what those drums sound like in this room. There was something strange happening with the 13. It just sounded brighter. But I can tell you I didn't change the mix at all. I don't know if it was just the way that the mic was positioned on that drum. But hopefully that gave you a kind of natural representation of what these different diameter drums sound like when just same drummer plays them in the same space with the same gear. What are my observations and conclusions? I prefer smaller drums tuned lower for the feel, and bigger drums, 14s and 15s, I like when you can tune them a little bit higher. You still get a bigger note, but you get a nice response for rolls. And also because the head is tighter, it's kind of eliminating some of the overtones. Like a medium low tuned drum head will have just so many overtones, which on the 12 it was cool. I think also because the smaller drum, it just has less sound. So it can have some crazy overtones, but they kind of stay nice and tight. Whereas with the 15, if I would have done a medium low, it would just be so much sound going all over the place. Sometimes cool, but not always the best choice. So I like bigger drums tuned a little bit higher. I can still get a big, a deeper, what's the right word? I can get the depth and lower note out of it, but because it has a little bit tighter, there's just a little bit more control and more rebound, which is probably counterintuitive. I think most people probably think a 12 is meant to be cranked. A 15 is meant to be down in the guttural region, which the 15 will do that fantastic as well. And we'll talk about that in a later episode. But it was kind of the opposite. I felt like they almost wanted to balance each other out. The smaller drum wanted to be tuned lower, the bigger drum wanted to be tuned higher to find like the perfect, like, happy medium between the two. That said, take a 12, crank it. You'll never get that sound out of a 15. Take a 15, barely put any tension on it. You'll never get that sound out of a 12. So I think it's really all about what you're looking for. But the 12 is more versatile than I expect, and same with the 15. So I think obviously everyone has to have a good 14-inch drum and maybe a 13. But for me, 14, 12, and a 15, like the 13 seemed to be the one that I would maybe leave out of the mix. I feel like the 12 and the 14 can kind of cover for me. So 12, 14, 15 would be my preferences. So anyway, that's just a quick demonstration of what the diameter of a snare drum can do for you. We'll come back next week and a different topic. I'm not sure which way we're going to go, because we could talk about shell types, metals, shell types, wood, depth of the shells. We definitely want to look at what all the different hoops do, where it's, whether it's single flange, double flange, triple flange, die cast. What do the snare wires do? I've already recorded a ton of videos comparing all the different snare wires. So there's a bunch of, we're going to take this, everything you need to know about a snare drum, as far as it needs to go. So hope you dig it, and let's move on.